Love entrepreneurs, and I always have. I like missionary entrepreneurs, people who are, they're doing it because there's something about the mission that they just can't not do it. They're so passionate about it. And I'm guessing that this room is full of such people. And I think you should be very optimistic. In fact, entrepreneurs need to be optimistic almost to the point of delusion. You need to be right there. There's this, you may remember the great John F. Kennedy speech about going to the moon and other things. He says, we do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. But I've always thought that for entrepreneurs, it should be a little different. We do these things not because they are easy, but because we thought they were going to be easy. So that's a useful attitude for entrepreneurs. And, Europe, you hear these things about Europe that it's not enough dynamism in Europe, there's too many regulations in Europe. Let me assure you, there are plenty of regulations everywhere, and what you need is that can-do attitude, that entrepreneurial attitude. That's what drives people to success, and Europe has all of the ingredients they need to be a dynamic, entrepreneurial, just a huge success, and you can tell it just from the people in this room. Startup companies, small companies, thrive in moments of great and rapid change. Stability favors incumbents, and rapid change favors small, dynamic, nimble startup companies. And so the world is so rapidly changing right now. There's never been a better moment to be an entrepreneur. There has never been a better moment to be a startup company. There's a lot packed in there, and I'll tell you my view on this is that it is possible to, be 18, 19, 20 years old, drop out of college, and be a great entrepreneur. And the world we have famous examples of that working, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, etc. But these people are the exception. I always advise to young people, go work at a best practices company somewhere where you can learn a lot of basic fundamental things, how to hire really well, how to interview, etc. There's a lot of stuff you would learn in a great company that will help you. And then there's still lots of time to start a company after you have absorbed. It increases your odds, in my opinion. I started Amazon when I was 30, not when I was 20. And I think that extra 10 years of experience actually improved the odds that Amazon would succeed. So that would always be I finished college, and I enjoyed college, and I think it's been helpful to me. And then I went on and I worked for a really great company called D.E. Shaw & Co., where I learned a tremendous amount there. When you're inside a big company, you can be entrepreneurial. Big companies need mavericks. They need people to lift them up and make them see new things. And it's up to the leadership of big companies, good companies, best practices companies, when they get larger, they defend their mavericks. They don't eject them. They figure out how to support them and keep them, driving change inside the company. Because really most big companies get comfortable, and the mavericks cause discomfort. And so it's easy to keep them away and kind of drive them out. But you'll lose so much that way. At Amazon and at Blue Origin, we're very careful to keep our mavericks. Well, you're right, this is something we have in common. My mother had me when she was very young. She had just turned 17 years old. She was still in high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. In fact, they tried to kick her out of high school for being pregnant, and my grandfather said, no, you can't kick her out. It's a public school. She gets to finish high school. So anyway, there she was, pregnant with me in high school and finishing in her whole senior year after I was born. And because she was so young, my grandparents took me every summer so that she could have, some other kind of life for a few months. Not only she was, when you are a very, very young mother, you grow up very fast. And so every summer, from the age of 3 or 4 until I was about 16, I went and spent with my grandparents on their ranch in South Texas. And my grandfather, at that point, so I only knew him as a rancher. He had done a bunch of things in his life, but at that point he was a rancher. And he did, and this is quite common, I think, in rural areas, that people do everything themselves. He did his own veterinary work, he repaired everything. He had this D6 Caterpillar bulldozer that he'd bought for like $5,000 because it was completely broken down, and we spent an entire summer fixing it. And to get the transmission out of the thing, we had to build our own crane. And so he had an incredible resourcefulness to him. You know, he believed he could solve any problem. And I sort of watched him, you know, his veterinary work on the cattle. He would make his own needles. He would get a little piece of wire and heat it up with a blowtorch and pound it flat and then sharpen it and drill a little hole through it. Some of the cattle even survived. That was a very formative moment for me, and I thought I was a very smart little kid. I was very confident, and I'm only at this point maybe 10 years old, and this was, you know, this would have been 1974. And there were a lot of radio commercials on the car radio about how smoking cigarettes kills you. This was 10 years after the US Surgeon General's warning, and it was still like there was big campaigns to get people to stop smoking. And one of these radio commercials said every puff on a cigarette takes 2 minutes off of your life. And my grandmother was a chain smoker. She smoked all day long, and so always when we were in the car, she would have the window down and she'd be smoking the whole time. And I hated this. I thought it smelled bad and I didn't like it. And I was listening to these radio commercials, and so I decided I would calculate how many years of her life she had taken off. If every puff is 2 minutes, and I did some estimating, and I stood up in the back of the car and I proudly announced that she had taken, I don't remember what the number was, let's say 7 years off of her life. And I thought in my 10-year-old brain that they were going to congratulate me for being so clever. And instead she burst into tears. And I was taken aback. My grandfather pulled the car over on the side of the road. And he had never said one harsh word to me, by the way. In our entire relationship, he never did say a harsh word to me, by the way. And so he pulled me around, he took me out of the car, and took me out to the back side of the car. She's still in the front seat, tears coming down her cheeks. And he said to me, I had no idea what he was going to say. And he said to me, Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than it is to be clever. And I think long-term thinking squares these things. So whenever you're in a situation where it seems that the short-term, like you're doing a business deal with someone, and if you think you're never going to deal with them again, then maybe you would come to a certain answer. But if you realize, I'm probably going to deal with this person for the rest of my life in one way or another, you come to a different answer. And so long-term thinking, whether it's with your customers or your business partners, or even with, you know, family members and loved ones, thinking about, okay, what do I want this to be like, not just right now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So, you know, in retail, I would always rather lose a sale than lose a customer. And you're thinking long term. And shareholders and customers and the business, everyone is aligned if you think out 10 or 20 years. It also helps you decide what to focus on. So if, you know, in a world that's rapidly changing, and because of AI and all the technologies we have and the dynamism in the world, so many things are changing, and they're changing so rapidly. So if you think long term, it forces you to think, what are the points of stability? What is not going to change? And one of the things that changes very slowly is customer needs. And so you can build a strategy around customer needs that will have durability. It will be durable in time. So an example of Amazon is that customers like fast deliveries. And so you'd be you would never expect 10 years from now, it would be impossible to imagine a customer saying, I love Amazon, I just wish you delivered a little more slowly. Or, I love Amazon, I just wish your prices were a little higher. Or, at Blue Origin, I love your rockets, but I just wish they were a little less reliable. And so you can, these ideas, these big ideas that are customer based, they start with the customer. It's an idea that is in the customer's brain. Those are the ones, because human nature doesn't change rapidly. And so what we as customers want tends to change slowly. And if you base your energies and direction and strategies and tactics, everything that makes a company effective around those customer needs, then you can change the details of how you get there all the time, because the world is changing so rapidly. The technologies will change, your competitive set will change, everything will change except those needs. And so that's another way that long-term thinking is protective, because it forces you to think about the real customer needs, to center those as your big ideas, and then put energy into them in 100 ways, and to be very dynamic. I'd always say be stubborn on the vision and flexible on the details. And you have to be, because the world is changing and you change your mind. I've noticed that people who are right a lot change their mind a lot. People who are wrong a lot are very stubborn on the details.